She thought she was just helping animals. But what happened next on that sidewalk stunned the entire city. Watch till the end. It's not what you expect. Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. The morning sun rose slowly over East Los Angeles, casting golden light across narrow streets still quiet from the night. The city had not yet burst into full motion. On the edge of a modest block, nestled between a bookstore and a laundromat, sat a small corner cafe, warm, welcoming, and mostly empty at this early hour. Inside, two large men sat near the back window, heads down, sipping coffee and sharing quiet conversation. John Cena wore a gray hoodie, his broad frame barely hidden beneath it, and across from him sat Dwayne Johnson in a simple white t-shirt and baseball cap. They were trying to go unnoticed, just two friends enjoying breakfast without the demands of the cameras or the crowd. The clink of cutlery against porcelain, mixed with the low hum of the radio behind the counter. "You ever notice," John said, gesturing with his fork, "that these little no-name diners always have the best food?" Dwayne chuckled, nodding in agreement. "It's because they don't care about branding. They care about flavor. You only think it's the best because your face isn't framed on the wall." They both laughed, the kind of quiet, genuine laugh that only comes with peace, a rare commodity for men constantly in the public eye. Outside the window, across the narrow street, a girl stood alone. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old, pale skin glowing slightly in the early light. Her name was Lily. She wore a hand-decorated yellow shirt with block letters that read, "Speak for the Voiceless." In her hands was a thick stack of colorful flyers. She stood still but alert, offering them politely to each passerby. Some ignored her, others smiled and took one. Every time someone did, she lit up with joy. John tilted his head and nodded toward her. "You see that?" Dwayne followed his gaze. "She's working harder than half the adults I know." "That's not for school credit," John said. "She believes in it." And he was right. Lily was not out for a class project or part of some supervised initiative. Her mother ran a small animal shelter on the verge of closing after city support had dried up. With adoptions down and bills rising, Lily decided to help the only way she knew how. She had drawn the flyers herself, printed copies at a friend's house, and came out early Saturday morning to spread the word. Across the street, a black and white LAPD cruiser slowed and pulled into a space behind a parking meter. Inside sat Officer Martin Colton, a man in his early 50s with a square jaw, short gray buzz cut, and mirrored sunglasses that rarely came off. In the back of the cruiser sat a Belgian Malinois named Thor, lean, sharp-eyed, and trained for canine operations. Colton watched Lily for a few minutes without moving. His coffee sat untouched in the console. To him, a child standing alone with a bag, handing out papers, was not just a child. It was a potential threat. He had seen it too many times, he told himself. Gangs used kids. Dealers used cover stories. He'd been fooled before. He wouldn't be again. He grabbed his radio. Unit 47 on Fremont and 5th. Minor observed loitering. Possible unauthorized distribution. Will approach and assess. He stepped out of the car, closing the door with a firm thud. The sun reflected off his glasses as he crossed the street, hand resting on his belt near the baton. Lily saw him coming. She straightened her shoulders, kept her smile. "Good morning, officer," she said, holding out a flyer with both hands. Colton stopped 2 feet from her. He didn't take the flyer. He looked her up and down. "You got a permit to pass these out?" Lily blinked. "No, sir, but I'm not selling anything. They're just—" He interrupted. "You're on city property, handing things out. That's solicitation. I'm just trying to help animals, she said quietly. Do you have ID? I'm 12. He looked at her small satchel. What's in the bag? Just more flyers and my water bottle. I need to see it. Okay. Back inside the cafe, John had stopped mid-bite. Dwayne's brow furrowed. She's talking to a cop now. John stood up slowly. Let's keep watching. Colton's voice was louder now. Open the bag, set it on the ground. Lily crouched down, placing the satchel gently. Her fingers trembled. The officer pressed a button on his key fob. The rear door of his cruiser clicked and swung open. Thor bounded out, ears alert, and took position at Colton's side. Lily took a step back. Please don't. He's trained to detect narcotics, Colton said. If he alerts, we have cause to search. I'm not carrying anything bad, she whispered. Put your hands where I can see them. Thor took a step forward, his teeth barely visible under his muzzle. John had had enough. He stepped away from the window, leaving his food untouched. Dwayne followed. This guy's escalating for no reason. Colton pointed at the satchel. Thor, check. The dog lunged forward, barking once sharp and loud. Lily screamed and stumbled back. That was when John Cena stepped onto the sidewalk. The sun hit his shoulders as he walked forward, jaw clenched, voice steady. Hey, that's enough. Officer Colton turned sharply at the sound of the voice, surprised to see John Cena striding toward him with calm intensity. A moment later, Dwayne Johnson stepped beside him, his expression unreadable but focused. The sudden presence of the two towering men shifted the energy on the street. Lily froze, still standing close to her satchel, her eyes wide with panic as the dog continued to growl softly at her feet. Colton narrowed his eyes behind his sunglasses. Back off, he barked, pointing at John. This is a police matter. John didn't slow. She's a 12-year-old girl handing out flyers. You called in a K-9 unit on a child? Dwayne added, We've been watching her for 20 minutes. She didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't dangerous. She was handing out flyers for a local shelter. Colton straightened up, trying to assert dominance. I don't need permission from a couple of celebrities to do my job. She was loitering. She didn't comply with an inspection. That's enough to escalate. John took one more step forward, his shadow falling over both Colton and the dog. Escalate to what? Deploying a trained animal against a kid? The dog growled again, confused by the tension but didn't move. Lily stood frozen, visibly shaking, her eyes flicking between the men, unsure of what to do. She clutched the straps of her bag. Colton motioned to the dog. Thor, hold. The dog stopped growling but remained tense. A few people on the sidewalk had begun to slow their pace, watching the scene unfold. A woman pulled out her phone, then another. Within seconds, cameras were filming. Colton noticed but didn't back down. If you interfere with a lawful order, I will arrest you, he warned John. You let that dog go one more inch toward that child, Dwayne said, his voice low and hard, and you'll be explaining yourself on national news tonight. Lily's face crumpled for a moment. She blinked quickly, trying to hold back tears. I didn't do anything, she whispered. I'm just helping my mom's shelter. John turned slightly toward her, softening his tone. You're okay now. He's not going to hurt you. Colton laughed dryly, shifting his stance. You think this is about hurting her? You think I get some kind of joy out of this? Dwayne looked him dead in the eye. You tell me. Colton's jaw tensed. His hand hovered over his belt. The atmosphere on the sidewalk grew heavier with each second. A small crowd had formed. Some were filming, others whispering. "That's John Cena," one woman whispered, "and The Rock." "They're protecting that girl," another said. "What did that cop do?" Colton tried to regain control. "This child is in violation of municipal code for handing out flyers," John snapped. "Come on, man." Colton pointed at the bag again. "I had reasonable suspicion she was distributing contraband. You don't know what I've seen out here." "And you don't know what we saw," Dwayne replied. "A kid with hand-drawn flyers and a smile." A siren sounded nearby. Another police cruiser pulled around the corner, coming to a stop just behind Colton's car. Two new officers stepped out, one male and one female, both younger, both clearly caught off guard by the scene in front of them. The female officer approached slowly, hand resting near her hip. "Everything okay here?" Colton gestured broadly. Subject refused to comply. These two decided to insert themselves. "She's 12, John said, pointing at Lily. "She was handing out flyers. He released a dog on her." The new officer's eyes widened. The woman crouched slightly and turned to Lily. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded, voice barely audible. "He scared me. The dog, he told it to check my bag." The new male officer glanced toward the small crowd of onlookers now filming. The female officer stood and turned to Colton. "Sir, with all due respect, we might need to de-escalate." Colton bristled. "I followed procedure." "There's no threat here," the young officer said, trying to sound neutral. Colton's lips curled, but he said nothing. John turned to the crowd. "Did anyone get what happened on video?" Several hands rose. One man said, "I've been filming since he let the dog out." Another voice added, "I got the whole interaction." Colton looked around, for the first time realizing that this wasn't going away. The situation had shifted. He was no longer in control. "You made a mistake," Dwayne said plainly, "but it's not too late to do the right thing." Colton exhaled slowly, then called off the dog. "Thor, return." The dog obeyed, running back to the open cruiser door and jumping in. The door closed automatically. "There," Colton muttered. "Now, maybe you can stop treating me like a villain." John stepped forward, standing tall, unwavering. "You don't become the villain when you make a mistake. You become one when you refuse to admit it." More sirens came. A third vehicle, this one unmarked, pulled up. Out stepped a sergeant, sharp-eyed, older, with a clipboard and a grim expression. His name tag read Finch. He took one look at the gathering, the phones, the child, the two massive men standing guard, and let out a breath. "Let's get some clarity," Finch said, starting with the girl. Lily looked up, still shaken. "He said I couldn't be here. He said I might have drugs, but I just had flyers, that's all. I was scared." Finch nodded once. "Okay." He turned to Colton. "Martin, step aside, now." Colton looked ready to protest, then bit it back. He stepped away. Finch turned to the female officer. "Take her statement. I want it clean." He faced John and Dwayne next. "You two, I know who you are. Thank you for not letting this get worse." John nodded. "We just did what any decent person should." Finch nodded. "That's rare these days." He looked around at the crowd. "But necessary." The tension finally broke. The crowd began to disperse slightly, though the cameras stayed rolling. Lily stood a little taller. Her hands still shook, but she was no longer alone. Officer Colton stood several feet from the crowd now, his jaw clenched and his fists balled at his sides. He hadn't expected the situation to spiral like this. He certainly hadn't expected to be standing on the defensive in front of John Cena, Dwayne Johnson, and half a dozen phones pointed straight at him. But even now, he didn't back down. Inside, he was seething. Lily remained close to her satchel, still visibly shaken but now flanked by the young female officer who stood protectively near her. Finch, the sergeant, took charge of the scene with calm authority. "Officer Colton," he said clearly enough for the gathering crowd to hear, "you are relieved from field duty pending review. Return to your vehicle." Colton didn't move at first. Then, without a word, he turned on his heel and stomped toward his cruiser. Thor, his loyal canine partner, stared quietly from the back seat, sensing the strange shift in tone and energy. The door slammed shut behind Colton. John and Dwayne remained close to Lily, watching every movement. Finch approached them. "Thank you both again," he said, his voice serious. "I don't want this to get ugly, but I've got a feeling it already has." "There are videos," John said. "People saw it happen. That's not something you can bury anymore." Finch nodded. "I'm aware. I just hope Internal Affairs is ready." Within the next 15 minutes, 3 more patrol cars arrived to assist with crowd management. The sidewalk had become a flashpoint of public attention. Local reporters started appearing, their vans pulling up quietly on side streets. Microphones were pulled out, tripods extended. The air was buzzing. Dwayne knelt beside Lily, who sat on the curb now, sipping a juice box that a bystander had offered her. "How's your arm?" he asked gently. "Still shaking a little," she replied, "but not like before." "You did great," he told her. "You stood your ground." "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "He looked at me like I was dangerous." "That wasn't about you," Dwayne said. "That was about his fear and his power. You didn't do anything wrong." "But he let the dog out," she said, eyes filling again. "He told it to check my bag." "And it didn't find anything," John added, stepping in, "because you were telling the truth. You always were." A few steps away, Finch stood in front of the cameras. "I want to make a short statement," he said firmly. "Today, an incident occurred involving a child, an LAPD officer, and the misuse of a K-9 unit. That officer has been removed from active patrol, and a full investigation has been initiated. I want to make something clear. The safety of our citizens, especially our children, is not negotiable." Reporters asked rapid-fire questions. Was the dog ordered to attack? Will charges be filed? What role did the celebrities play? Finch held up a hand. "There will be a formal report. Until then, I ask for patience and for accountability to take its course." Behind the scenes, John and Dwayne had stepped away with Lily and her mother, who had just arrived. She rushed to her daughter and dropped to her knees, clutching her tightly. "I got the call and came as fast as I could," her mother said breathlessly. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Mom," Lily said, tears finally spilling down her face. "I was just so scared." "I'm here now," her mother whispered. "You're safe." John and Dwayne gave them space, but stayed close enough to remain part of the moment. After a few more minutes, the press turned toward the heroes themselves. "Mr. Cena, Mr. Johnson, can we get a comment? Why were you there? Did you feel threatened by the officer?" John stepped forward, calm but firm. "We were having breakfast. We saw a kid handing out flyers. We saw an officer treat her like a criminal. We saw him call out a police dog. That's all we needed to see." "Did he break protocol?" a reporter asked. "That's not our job to decide," Dwayne answered. "But we know what we saw, and we weren't about to just sit there and do nothing." Finch joined them. "These men didn't interfere," he said for the cameras. "They stepped in to protect a citizen. That's called doing the right thing." As the crowd grew larger, a civil rights lawyer approached. Her name was Amelia Benton, mid-40s, confident and articulate. She offered Lily's mother her card and promised legal assistance. "If you're ready to fight this, I'll stand with you," she said. "I've handled cases like this before, but this one is going to matter." "Why this one?" Lily's mother asked. "Because this one has video," Amelia replied, "and two very loud, very visible witnesses." At that moment, a new hashtag began trending online, #JusticeForLily. The videos continued to spread. Celebrities began retweeting clips. Activists added their voices. The shelter's website crashed from too many donation attempts. In less than an hour, the story was nationwide. Back on the sidewalk, Lily looked up at John and Dwayne, who stood like calm mountains behind her. "Will this change anything?" she asked softly. John knelt down beside her. "Yes," he said, "because you were brave enough to speak, and because people are finally listening." As the three of them stood together, the crowd continued to gather, but the fear that had once filled the air had changed into something else. A spark, a shift, a beginning. By the time the sun began to dip behind the city skyline that evening, the video of Lily's encounter had already spread across every major platform. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, each flooded with clips of Officer Colton unleashing his dog, Lily trembling beside her bag, and John Cena stepping between the girl and danger. Headlines exploded across news outlets. Cop uses K9 to intimidate girl handing out flyers. John Cena and Dwayne Johnson confront LAPD officer. 12-year-old activist becomes symbol of justice. At the heart of it all was Lily, still in her yellow shirt, sitting quietly in her bedroom while her mother paced anxiously nearby on the phone with a civil rights attorney. The small animal shelter website had crashed from donations and messages of support. Volunteers arrived in record numbers that afternoon. Boxes of pet food, toys, and handwritten letters for Lily filled the entrance hall. A banner had even been hung on the fence. "We stand with Lily." John and Dwayne returned quietly to the shelter that evening, away from cameras and reporters. They didn't knock on the door, they just walked in like family. The room went silent when they entered. Volunteers smiled, some teared up. Lily's mother approached, shaking their hands firmly. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "We said we would," John replied. "We're not here for thanks," Dwayne added. "We're here to help." They were led to a back office where Amelia Benton, the civil rights lawyer, had set up a temporary legal hub. Stacks of printed tweets, video transcripts, statements from witnesses, and legal documents were spread across the desk. "We're building a case," Amelia said without hesitation. "This isn't just misconduct. It's unlawful detainment, excessive force, and endangering a minor. He deployed a police dog on a child." "How fast will the department move?" Dwayne asked. "That depends on how much pressure the public keeps applying," Amelia said. "But with the footage and the witnesses we have, they'll have to act." "And if they try to stall," John asked, "we take it federal." Meanwhile, at a dim bar across town, Officer Colton sat, hunched over a drink, face red, jaw tight. Two off-duty colleagues sat beside him, one checking his phone obsessively. "They've got your face everywhere, man," the officer said. "All over the news, even ESPN." "I did my job," Colton muttered. "She was acting suspicious." "She was handing out flyers," the other officer replied flatly, "with a cartoon cat on them." "This city's gone soft," Colton growled. "You'll see. Give it a week. People will move on. They always do." "Not this time," came the answer. She's a kid, with celebrities backing her. At the shelter, Lily sat beside a volunteer gently brushing a small dog. She hadn't spoken much that afternoon, but she kept her eyes on the door, like she was expecting something. Finally, she asked, "Do you think he's sorry?" "The officer?" the volunteer asked. Lily nodded. "I don't know," the woman said, "but that doesn't matter. What matters is that the world saw what he did." Lily didn't answer, but her eyes were sharper now, more awake. That night, national news programs ran full segments. They played the videos, the statements from the LAPD, interviews with eyewitnesses, and expert opinions on K-9 policy and abuse of authority. On one major network, the segment ended with a new clip. Lily sitting on a folding chair at the shelter, answering a reporter's question with quiet determination. "I wasn't hurting anyone," she said. "I just wanted to help animals, and I guess I didn't think grown-ups could be that mean to someone like me." Her words silenced even the most jaded commentators. Hashtags continued to trend. #Justice for Lily, #Real Heroes Step Up, #Flyers Not Fear. Online communities organized vigils. Pet stores pledged donations. A city council member publicly condemned the officer's behavior. The chief of police released a statement. "We take these allegations seriously. There will be a thorough investigation." But the pressure only grew. The next day, Lily and her mother were invited to speak at a City Hall forum on youth safety and police conduct. The room was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. John and Dwayne sat quietly in the last row, arms folded, watching. When Lily stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. "I'm not here to complain," she began. "I'm here to be heard." Her voice shook at first, but steadied with each sentence. "I love animals. I love helping. I believe in kindness. But last weekend, someone in uniform made me feel like a criminal. Not because of what I did, but because he chose fear over facts. He let a dog loose near me because I was standing on a sidewalk with a bag of flyers. That shouldn't happen to anyone." The room erupted in applause. Outside, cameras captured her standing tall between John and Dwayne, both with their hands on her shoulders. Later, back at the shelter, a surprise awaited. A local artist had painted a mural on the brick wall. Lily standing with her hand extended, offering a flyer, and behind her a soft silhouette of a dog, peaceful now. At the top it read, "Speak for the voiceless, stand for the brave." Lily stood before it for a long time, saying nothing. Finally, she looked at John and asked, "What if I hadn't spoken up?" "Someone else would have had to," he said, "but it's better that it was you." "You reminded people that silence isn't strength," Dwayne added, "and now they're listening." The fight wasn't over, but it had begun. The days that followed were unlike anything Lily or her mother had ever experienced. What began as a quiet act of compassion had transformed into a citywide reckoning. Donations poured in from across the country. People who had never heard of the little South LA animal shelter now wore shirts printed with Lily's words, "Kindness isn't a crime." Reporters continued arriving at the shelter each morning, hoping to catch even a glimpse of the girl who had become a symbol of courage. But Lily's mother began limiting interviews. This wasn't about spectacle, she reminded everyone. It was about making real change. Inside the LAPD Internal Affairs Division, the pressure intensified. Officer Colton sat stiffly in a windowless room, flanked by a lawyer on one side and a disciplinary board on the other. Across from him sat a lead investigator, flipping through printed screenshots, transcripts, and sworn statements. "Let's walk through this again," the investigator said coldly. You engaged a child, age 12, who was distributing non-commercial material. She informed you she was helping a shelter. At what point did she pose a threat? Colton shifted. She didn't have ID. She refused to open the bag. She did open it, the investigator countered. You told her to put it down. Then you ordered your K-9 to perform a check. It was standard procedure, Colton said, voice tightening. She could have been covering for someone. You escalated a non-criminal contact into a use of force situation, the investigator continued. And then you threatened civilian interference. That's not procedure. That's personal. Colton didn't answer. Across the city, Sergeant Finch stood in front of a podium flanked by city officials. Today, the Los Angeles Police Department is officially terminating Officer Martin Colton for misconduct, misuse of force, and violation of protocol, he said. We are cooperating with civil rights investigators and offering full transparency into the events of that day. The crowd applauded. Lily watched the announcement from the shelter office, her mother sitting quietly beside her. Dwayne Johnson and John Cena stood near the door, their arms crossed, silent but present. Is it really over? Lily asked softly. It's a step, Dwayne said. Not the last one, but a big one. They actually did it, her mother whispered. They held him accountable. Because you didn't back down, John added. Because people saw you, heard you, and believed you. That afternoon, Lily walked outside the shelter and saw something she hadn't expected. Dozens of people from the neighborhood stood in front of the mural. Some held candles, others held signs. One little girl clutched a stuffed dog and wore a yellow shirt just like Lily's. They came for you, her mother said. No, Lily replied, her voice steady. They came for everyone who's ever been told to stay quiet. At the city courthouse, Amelia Benton filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the LAPD and Officer Colton, citing unlawful detainment, endangerment of a minor, and abuse of authority. This is not about revenge, she told the press. This is about precedent. If they can silence one child, they can silence hundreds. We won't let that happen. The legal community took notice. National organizations like the ACLU and Human Rights Watch publicly backed the case. Lily's name began to appear in headlines alongside terms like systemic reform and accountability in youth policing. But she remained grounded. At the shelter, she still fed the cats. She still refilled the water bowls. She still answered the phone with a bright, hopeful voice. One morning, weeks later, she returned from school to find a group of teenagers gathered in the newly built classroom corner of the shelter. A volunteer explained that local kids had started coming by to learn about animal care and community activism. They said they saw your story, the woman said, and they wanted to help. Lily smiled and stepped inside. She answered questions. She showed them how to comfort a nervous puppy. She talked about flyers and courage. She didn't tell them what to think. She just showed them what she did. Across the city, conversations were still happening. City council meetings were flooded with parents sharing stories of past abuses. Officers who had once stayed silent began speaking out about internal culture. And, at the state level, a bill was introduced. The Lily Moore Act, designed to protect minors from police overreach and redefine guidelines around K-9 deployment. Back at the shelter, John and Dwayne visited again, walking through the front gate like they always had, quietly without fanfare. They watched as Lily read aloud to a group of kids seated in a half circle on the floor. A small dog lay beside her. She didn't see them right away. She was too focused, too strong. She's different now, Dwayne whispered. No, John replied, smiling. She's the same. The world's just finally catching up to her. As the sun set, Lily stepped outside one last time and looked out at the street where everything began. It looked peaceful now, familiar, but she knew it would never be the same again. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a single flyer. She smiled, not because it was over, but because she knew what it had started.